Hello, everyone. Thank you for attending our presentation tonight on Zoom or on Facebook Live. First, we have to take care of housekeeping. Always housekeeping, of course. Okay. Yeah, it's unmuted. I need you to be aware that your view is muted to reduce background noise. And I would appreciate it very much if you would enter your questions and your comments in the QA box so that we can answer all your questions at the end. We try to make sure that the plants we're discussing tonight, are suitable for our local 7 and 8 planting zones. Be aware that these presentations are recorded and you can access them on YouTube and on Facebook. North Fulton Master Gardeners has our own Facebook page. And we'd appreciate it so much if you'd complete the survey at the end so that it would help us get better at this. All right, Master Gardeners. About 50 years ago, county extension agents in each state, not all at the same time, began recruiting volunteers to help them answer the deluge of agricultural questions they were receiving. The ag agents, with the help of their their state land-grant college, trained volunteers in many aspects of urban agriculture. Our North Fulton Master Gardeners is a volunteer organization. We assist the Fulton County Cooperative Extension in providing horticultural and ecological education opportunities for our community, and we help our agents in any way we can. Basically, we're a bunch of volunteers who love plants and gardening and love sharing our appreciation and knowledge of plants. We're excited this spring, well, and last fall too, to embark on a new class format by presenting our yearly lecture series in a virtual platform, which expands our audience and allows a return visit to classes, which is good for me because I forget things. Please note that registration for each class is required, but the recordings may be viewed at any time. And there's plenty of time, y'all, to register for our last class this spring. Is a spring vegetable planting demonstration. You will love it. There are lots of ways to check out what we're doing. Now let's get started. I am Paula Lindsey. The first thing I did when I retired was undertake Master Gardener training. I volunteered, we're all volunteers, you know. I volunteered at Archibald Smith Plantation, which is near Roswell City Hall. Our goal there is to restore 2 acres of the park to become native plant habitat. That picture is me pulling Japanese stilt grass, which is a thing we deal with every year because the seed bank lasts a long time, but we'll get it eventually. Today, I would like to talk about the importance of using native plants in our own yards. Planting natives is not simply important, but it's critical to halt bird population decline. I need to tell you first, though, I am not an expert on native plants. I am, however, an enthusiast. I'm pretty good at looking things up, and I'm a firm believer in the idea that to protect our native birds, butterflies, and our ecology, we must plant native plants wherever we can. Okay, so what's a native plant? There are about as many definitions of native as there are people who make them. Most definitions include a location, an evolutionary time frame, and an indication of whether or not humans were involved. If a plant has been here since before Europeans arrived, it's generally considered a native, and it has evolved with a real physiological connection with the animals in the environment. This is different from imported naturalized plants, which have adapted to our surroundings and become part of the landscape, but do not have an intrinsic connection with wildlife. We'll have to talk too about what invasive is. Not all non-native species are considered invasive. Key to the concept of invasive is the idea of harm. Invasive species are usually invasive because they outcompete our native plants and take their jobs over, and non-natives can't do the job of natives, so that's pretty bad. It's also possible for a species to be invasive in one ecosystem, but not in another. Mahoney is an example of this. It's native to the Northwest, but it's invasive here in the Southeast. It's also true that non-native species, while they may not harm the environment, cannot fully support the living things in our ecosystem. Most of us love birds and butterflies. What is the robin feeding its young? The robin is feeding soft worms to its fledglings. It will eat berries and other kinds of things that the babies just can't eat. This is another scary thing that's happening. Monarch butterflies are close to extinction. In the 1980s, millions, well, 1.2 million monarchs moved to their nesting location on the West Coast. The most recent census shows that fewer than 29,000 monarchs were at these sanctuary locations. That's a 41% reduction in the population. This has occurred primarily because of destruction of milkweed habitat along their migratory routes. These graphs are a little tricky to read, but look at graph A. It's clear that there has been a drastic decline in bird population since 1970. Ooh, that's bad. One research study published by Audubon reports that North America has lost 1 in every 4 birds in the last 50 years. That's 2.9 billion birds gone. Just gone. I find this frightening. Now, let's notice the blue line at the top of the middle graph. It's trending level or upward while the others are all trending down. And the blue bar on the rightmost graph is only showing the one positive. The rest are showing negative. The blue line and the blue bar represent waterfowl. 100 years ago, duck hunters observed that there were fewer and fewer ducks to hunt. So they did something about it. They worked to bring about legislation for wetland habitat conservation and hunting controls. In 1934, Franklin Delano Roosevelt signed the Migratory Bird Hunting Stamp Act. We call them duck stamps these days, to protect wetlands that are necessary for migratory waterfowl. The efforts of duck hunters caused wetland bird populations to remain steady and even increase. This leads me to believe that although we are a little late starting, we really can help bird populations recover. But why are the birds dying or the populations becoming smaller? The reason for bird species decline are myriad and complex, but 2 root causes stand out. One is loss of habitat, particularly grasslands and forests. Why is this happening? Our country has developed a great deal of our land, and the parks that we still have preserved are simply not enough to support bird populations at a viable level. Our country no longer has large tracts available to designate sanctuary for birds. So the big deal is the need to make our own yards havens for birds, bees, and butterflies in order to slow and prevent bird population decline. Another major reason for we are losing birds is wide-scale and sometimes inappropriate use of chemicals, both herbicides and insecticides, and I think fertilizers. Some plants available in the horticulture trade are often infused with neonicotinoids, I'll just call them neonics, that are derived from nicotine. Neonics kill every insect that touches them. Sometimes such plants are labeled pest-free. No bug's going to eat me. Fortunately, growers are responding to the outcry against neonics, and their use is decreasing. But be aware of what you buy. While we're talking about spraying insects, I'm going to go off on a tangent and talk about spraying for mosquitoes. There are other safer ways than actually, and possibly even more effective to handle mosquitoes than spraying to kill the adults. As the slide recommends, dump out all water containers. Take a weekly stroll around your property and remove any standing water. If you need to keep standing water in your bird bath, use BT, Bacillus thuringiensis. It's a bacteria that kills just the mosquito larvae. At first, I hesitated to use BT, but strains have developed that only kill the mosquito larvae and not any of the other insects that visit the water or pets that visit the water. You can also use a safe organic repellent on the lawn to keep mosquitoes away. Doug Tallamy has a particular method that I'm going to try this summer. Mosquitoes love to lay their eggs in stinky water. Doug Tallamy is an eminent entomologist and conservation advocate. He says that it's easier to kill mosquitoes from their larvae, like the picture right here. The way to do that is to make a slurry of water and hay or straw, allow it to ferment, get stinky, and then add a mosquito dunk, which is a compressed tablet of I'm just going to say BT if that's okay, the bacterium that kills only the mosquitoes without harming other insects. The BT does need to be replaced or refreshed every 30 days. Here is the crux of the matter, the big deal, if you will. Many moths, butterflies, and other useful insects require, this means they cannot live without, certain native plants to raise their young. Monarch caterpillars, for example, we know cannot eat any plant other than native milkweeds, the ones that they evolved with, how many hundreds of years. All birds need caterpillars and other soft, high-protein insects to feed their young. Even birds that themselves predominantly eat seeds must feed caterpillar sausages to their nestlings. When we landscape, we focus on landscape pretty instead of landscape useful. But I believe that we can have both. Birds need caterpillars, and caterpillars need native plants. Once again, with the big deal, to feed the birds, we must provide native plants. People do not realize that their perfectly manicured landscape yards full of imported plants do not support insects and therefore do not support birds. It's a sterile landscape. Yeah, there are insects in your lawn that you spray for and a few insects on the plants, but they're not fully integrated into the ecology of the location. So the inevitable conclusion is that in order to slow bird population, we have to create and maintain native plant habitats. This particular garden is a flower bed that has been made along the guidelines of a Connect to Protect guidelines at UGA in Athens. Each Connect to Protect garden must have plants that bloom in the spring, plants that bloom in the summer, and plants that bloom in the fall. This provides nectar and pollen all season long. And the other part of a Connect to Protect garden, by the way, you can register yours when you design and make it and plant it. The other part of a Connect to Protect garden is that there must be a butterfly or moth host plant in your garden. So what can we do? Plant native plants in your yard. Even a pot on the patio can help. Can't say it too often, plant natives. I have this fantasy that every apartment complex on every balcony has a pot with native plants in it. These plants in the picture are not necessarily native, but you get the idea. You can support the birds and the bees from your apartment. Another thing that we can do is to reduce lawn area. Our beloved grass lawns are sterile monocultures. I think I said that already. They make little contribution to biodiversity and to supporting bird populations and insect populations. So reduce the amount of lawn, mulch. Whoa, they really did a good job of mulching. This particular little tree, pretty as it is, and it is shedding some leaves to provide a little bit of mulch underneath it, needs mulch. And this is how you mulch. Pile the mulch wide, not high, and leave at least 6 inches between the tree trunk and the mulch. When we pile mulch up like that, gardeners or horticulturists call it volcano mulch. Well, the reason we don't want to do this is that the mulch touching the tree does its good job of holding in the moisture. The moisture attracts insects, mold, and fungus that is not good for the tree. Also, if the mulch is piled high instead of wide, the trunk will send roots out into the mulch. We call these adventitious roots. The adventitious roots can absorb water and nutrients, but they can't contribute to the stability of the tree. All right, now for the fun part. This is almost like eat this, not this. We're going to say, instead of planting English ivy, plant native alternatives. I have to say this though, did you know that English ivy harbors mosquitoes? And if it gets big enough, it can pull down a tree. In one of my classes, the teacher brought in a piece of English ivy that was as big as my arm. No, it was bigger. So it can get big and pull down trees. Native vines don't do that though, because they don't get that big. One guest on Walter Reeve Saturday morning garden program said that the only good thing about English ivy is that when you remove it, the soil underneath is rich with humus. There are short natives that stay green all year round and even bloom in the spring or summer that make excellent ground cover. If you have shade, try green and gold. It's there all year long, green and pretty. It gets a little droopy looking in the winter, but it comes out fresh in the spring and it blooms in the spring. Another of my favorites is Phlox subulata, tomato. Anyway, you get the idea. We call it thrift. Don't be confused with the thrift that's at the seashore. This is a phlox. You've seen this before. I know my grandmother grew it on the bank in front of her house. And if you want a vine, Virginia creeper has beautiful fall colors as well as berries for the birds. You want a native vine that stays green all year round? My friend Sandy reminded me that Carolina jasmine will do that for us. Thank you. It's not jasmine, it's jessamine. Carolina jessamine. Jasmine is a foreign plant. It smells good, but it's not native. Ground covers. Again, some more ground covers. Liriope goes everywhere. The Liriope muscari is categorized as invasive category 3, and spicata is also categorized as invasive category 4. Category 4 is not as bad. It means you just have to watch it. But why would you have, well, I'm not going to say that. Why plant an invasive plant when you can have a beautiful native like blue-eyed grass? Now, my blue-eyed grass is only about 10 or 12 inches tall. It does like sun. It will tolerate part shade. But I look for it every year to come back and bloom, and I just love it. Sedges are excellent ground covers, and some, like Carex splenda, are green all year round. This particular variety prefers sun, but will do okay in part shade. It likes wet to medium soil and will tolerate alkaline soil. We don't have to worry about that here, though, because most of our soil is acid to slightly acid. Ferns are beautiful ground covers in the shade. We use a lot of Christmas fern at Smith Plantation, and crested wood fern, Dryopteris cristata, stays green all year round. Now, not all the ferns are evergreen. Some of them die down in the winter, and like our beautiful perennials that we love, come back in the spring and treat us to some beautiful green ground cover. You guessed it. This is my very favorite ground cover. Nature lays down a blanket of leaves every fall to protect the roots and keep the moisture in, and it also provides a place for native, useful, or beneficial insects to overwinter. And some insects, like fritillary butterflies, need leaf litter to lay their eggs in near the plants that are their hosts. When I was first learning about this, I thought that all the butterflies laid their eggs on a host plant, so that all the caterpillar had to do was pop out of the egg and start eating. But not fritillaries. They have to go find a violet to eat. And if you really want green under your trees, you know the grass can't compete with the tree roots. Plant moss. Moss grows beautifully in the shade. What you have to do to keep it nice is to remove debris, which, that's the leaves. You have to take the leaves off, and pull weeds up as soon as they pop up. And don't put any lime on it, because that kills moss. Grasses, popular landscape grasses. I am so happy to find that this native grass, muhly grass, some people call it pink, some people call it purple. Native grass is being used in the landscape trade. It blooms these beautiful pink panicles in October, just as the flowering perennials are losing their flowers. Insects use native grasses for host plants. The seeds are eaten by small birds and small mammals that become food for larger birds. Both muhly grass and Indian grass, which gets really tall, would look very good at the back of the border, require full sun. Did you know that Georgia used to be prairie? The Piedmont, all of the Piedmont was prairie. Yes, we even had buffaloes. Graceful switchgrass, another fairly tall grass, is one of the dominant species in tallgrass prairie, and it's being investigated as a potential source of biofuel, but it makes a beautiful accent. One of my personal goals is to make part of my yard a pocket prairie and just see what kinds of animals visit. No, I'm not expecting any buffaloes. All right, it's time for the Nandina rant. Folks love the beautiful red berries, and they stay on the plant all year long, all winter long, pretty much. Have you ever wondered why the birds don't eat them? That's because the berries contain cyanide. Well, they actually contain a compound that when it's digested in the bird's tummy becomes cyanide. Now, a bird can eat 2 or 3 of these berries and be okay. But what happens is a hungry flock of cedar waxwings at the end of winter, when all the food is gone, finds these beautiful berries and they stuff themselves. They fill their tummies full of the berries turn into cyanide or produce cyanide, and the birds die. The entire flock can die. And as for the small, non-blooming, and therefore not invasive Nandina, the landscape loves these, but to my tiny mind, I think they're occupying a location that could be occupied by a native that's just as beautiful, but also supports insects and therefore birds. A couple more aliens or invasives before we get to the good part. Elaeagnus. Do we have to talk about Elaeagnus? It was imported to be good at preventing erosion, and it is. It also provides thickets for birds and food. But most of the plants are pesky invaders because the birds eat the berries, and go and poop out the seed, and then another elaeagnus comes up. I find them in my yard all the time, and I do not have any elaeagnus in my yard. There is research, and this sort of tickled me. There is research that suggests that non-native berries like elaeagnus do not provide adequate nutrition for the birds. It's as if the birds are eating junk food all the time. I like an occasional potato chip, but I don't want to eat them all the time. All right, tea olive. Tea olive smells so good to us, maybe, but insects are repelled by the odor of tea olive, so it does not provide pollen or nectar for our insects. When there are many, many native plants that are fragrant and can provide pollen and nectar. One more slide of invasives, and then we'll get to the good stuff. I promise. Can't talk about non-native invasive shrubs without pointing out the invasive nature of leatherleaf mahonia. And it's funny because mahonia is native in the Northwest, but invasive in the Southeast. It can feed the birds, but again, we're talking junk food. And this is just weird to me. The drupes will ferment, and the birds will eat the fermented berries, and you can guess what happens. Often an imported plant, look at this graph. We're talking about Chinese privet, well, specifically, but in general, any invasive plant works like this. Chinese privet was imported in 1852. How many years ago was that? It took 100 years for it to reach invasive status. So an imported plant comes and hangs around doing its beautiful job, its decorative job, escapes from it here and there over the years. Well, no one's looking. And then before you know it, the population is so big that you can't get rid of it. So the time to remove invasives is before the population gets too big. Have you ever noticed that when you drive along the road in the woods and sometimes just on the bank of the road, there's a lot of green plants in the edge of the woods? That's privet, escaped privet that's invading our woods. I read about an experiment where they took 2 plots of land, identical patches of garden, same sun, same water, all that, a lot of native plants in each plot. They planted privet in one plot. After 82 weeks, that's less than 2 years, after 82 weeks, there were no more natives in the privet plot. This is the kind of thing that privet does. It's a bully and a thug and kicks out our natives that help the birds and the bees. That, I don't know, this is an example of what natives, non-native invasives can do. All right, now we're here to the good stuff. I started with blueberries because they are native just specifically to this area, some of them. And blueberries have a lot of varieties to offer, from 2-foot dwarf vaccinium, that's blueberries, pallidum, to the high bush varieties that get to be 12 feet. I'm not going to say vaccinium corbosum, that's just too hard. And one really cool thing about this, well, there are a couple of cool things. You can find blueberry bushes at the big box stores. Blueberry is also host to brown elfin butterflies. You can't say host about privet. Fothergilla has 2 sizes to offer. Fothergilla gardeniae is short, no bigger than 3 feet. Fothergilla major gets up to 12 feet. Both are fragrant and they have beautiful white blooms from April to May. They do lose their leaves in the fall, though. Fothergilla attracts bees and butterflies. Now, understand when I say bees, I'm speaking of tiny native bees that don't sting. There are native bees that sting, paper wasps and yellow jackets, but most of the more than, now get this, 3,000 varieties of bees in North America are innocuous. They're solitary bees just seeking nectar and pollen and a place to lay their eggs. More native shrubs, hydrangea quercifolia. Oh, yeah. This word, the quercus word, is the word for oak. in the scientific nomenclature system. What can you say? Beautiful, supports nature. And last summer I got so excited because there were tiny bees hovering around the panicles of my oak leaf hydrangea. More beautiful, fragrant native shrubs. Virginia sweetspire, which only gets about 4 feet high, blooms sweetly from May to June and smells nice. Clethra I can't say that one. We'll just say summer sweet, okay? Summer sweet blooms from July to August, and it smells sweet too. So imagine if you planted both of those in your yard, you would have fragrance from May to August. And summer sweet, this is too cool. Summer sweet has been identified as a Georgia pollinator plant of the year. And because of the way that program works, summer sweet should be available, at least in native plant nurseries, with gardeners all over the state. That's just so happy making to me. All right, trees. I want to do hollies as a segue because hollies can be small bushes. Hollies can be like inkberry, only 8 feet tall. Of course, you can prune it to make it smaller if you want. But holly can be small bushes like inkberry and winterberry holly. Look at that. It's deciduous. It loses its leaves, but it shows off all these beautiful red berries. Or holly can be an in-between shrub like Yupon holly, or it can grow into I'm not going to say full-size tree because these are considered small trees, but American holly, Ilex opaca, can only get, 50 feet tall typically. This particular tree is in a public location where you can go and visit it if you like. It's in the Roswell Historical Cemetery. Now, hollies interbreed readily, so if you have trouble finding Ilex opaca in the native plant nursery, look for Savannah holly because it will provide about the same kind of stuff. There's a story about Yupon holly. Notice its name, Ilex vomitoria. Oh man. Ilex vomitoria, Yupon holly, makes delicious tea. You make the tea just like you make it out of the camellias that come from the Orient. Dry the leaves and so forth. But I like Yupon holly tea a lot because it seems to be milder. I think it has less tannin in it. I like to think that the British settlers promoted this vomitoria name so that their settlers, the colonists would not learn to make their own tea, and the British would have a monopoly on tea. So anyway, the reason it's called vomitoria is because the Native Americans used it in some of their rituals. They would drink, it's not an emetic, not at all. They would drink so much that they would throw up. You can do the same thing with water if you want to. The participants would drink and throw up, and this is really cool. The leaves, the tea leaves, were a trade item among the native tribes. More natives. Oh, wait, not yet. Now we have to talk about some non-native trees. The saga of the Bradford pear, the perils. When it was first developed from Callery pear, gardeners just were enthralled with the brilliant or the beautiful symmetrical shape, and they learned to tolerate the odor of the stinky blossoms. But Bradford pear, when a bird eats the fruit and drops the seed, a Callery pear comes up. Callery is the pear kind of pear variety from which Bradford was developed. If you drive through the woods this time of year, actually they've about stopped blooming now, you'll see lots of beautiful white blooms in the woods. That's because a bird ate a Bradford pear fruit, pooped it out, and a Callery pear came up in its stead. Callery pears can fill an empty lot in no time at all. And when it does that, it competes with the natives that support our birds and bees and butterflies. Another small tree that we love so much, traditional crepe myrtle. It is spectacular. It does have to be pruned to make a lot of blooms because it blooms on new wood. So a lot of crepe myrtle comes about. And crepe myrtle is said to support 37 species of animals with nectar, pollen, and sometimes nesting sites. An oak tree, on the other hand, an oak tree supports at least 280 species of just insects. And Doug Tallamy says that oaks support as many as 4,000 different animals. Now, I'm not going to plant an oak tree where I want a small, beloved crepe myrtle, but I have other options that are native that I can plant that will do the same job landscaping wise. Buckeye can do it all. Bottle brush buckeye with the white, beautiful white panicles grows in the shade, and it only gets 12 feet tall. So it's a gorgeous, well, that's actually really a shrub, I guess, a gorgeous small tree. And red buckeye likes the full sun. So buckeyes have the sun part covered. Ransy graybeard, also known as fringe tree or old man's beard, likes sun and well-drained soil. It is dioecious, if I said that right, which means that there are female plants and there are male plants. And this one's interesting because both plants have blossoms. The male plants have more blossoms than the female. The female makes the berries. Every spring, I used to go down into my dad's pasture and sit under the Ransy graybeard there and just breathe. Fringe trees smell amazingly, and they're host to many butterflies and moth larvae, including some sphinx moths. More small native trees. We all know and love dogwood. I had to put this huge dogwood tree in the slides because it's so big. Most dogwoods simply don't get that big. And it looks like this one is in full sun. Most dogwoods do better with part shade. There are 12 different dogwood family species that are native. One of them, and they range in sizes from 6 inches tall to a 25-foot tree. The short one is Cornus canadensis, which only gets 6 inches and has berries that you can eat. I'm going to try to find some of that this year and plant it as ground cover. And when I was working on this, I realized that I had left out redbud tree. Have you ever noticed when they're blooming at the same time, redbud and dogwood, and sometimes in the woods, they're standing there together and their branches intertwine, and the pink and the white together is just spectacular. So redbuds are fabulous because the bees love them. And witch hazel, not only is witch hazel considered the most widely used botanical in the world, it provides nectar for the bees in the late season. Notice that the Virginiana species blooms from October to December. So on a warm December day, when a bee crawls out of its shelter, we're talking the little native bees now, the tiny ones, that shelter in plant stalks. When it comes out on a warm December day, it can find nectar and pollen. And then its taller cousin, Vernalis, takes care of the blooms from January to April. So the witch hazel has the blooms and the nectar and pollen covered for our bees in the wintertime. I laugh about this tree. Amelanchier, I sort of almost learned how to pronounce it. Shadbark, it's called. Serviceberry, it's called. Or as us hill folks say, sarvisberry, can grow as tall as 30 feet. It prefers full sun, but it will grow in the shade. And we have 3 different varieties to choose from, depending on the characteristics that we want. The early blooms are a boon to pollinators, and the fruit is sweeter than blueberries, if you can get them before the birds do. The berries also contain important minerals that are wholesome for us. And yeah, you guessed it, Amelanchier is a host to butterflies, several of them, including tiger butterflies, viceroys, and admirals. Beautiful in all seasons and a boon to wildlife. Smoke tree. I only met a smoke tree a few years ago. I'd never seen them before. But, well, they like well-drained acidic soil, which is not usually a problem around here, and full sun. The stems, you can either grow a single trunk tree or a multi-trunk tree, but the stems take on interesting configurations, which you can see in the wintertime. And the flowers are very inconspicuous, but they're on very long petioles. And when the breeze blows, they sway and they look like smoke. And in the fall, magnificent colors. Sparkleberry. You know, this is sometimes called farkleberry. I looked and looked and I could not find the origin of that name for sparkleberry. But sparkleberry is North America's largest blueberry. There's an ilex that's also called sparkleberry, which is the problem with common names because one plant can have 16 common names and share half of them with another plant. But so farkleberry, if you will, Vaccinium arboreum, is North America's largest blueberry. Another fragrant native, provides huge benefits to wildlife. I'm going to say it again. Shelter, pollen and nectar, berries for food, and host to butterflies. Now, this is just cool. Some bees, we're talking about native bees now, will hover underneath a blossom, vibrate their flight muscles at exactly the right frequency so that the pollen falls out onto the bee. Is that not just the coolest thing you ever heard? Sassafras, you never forget the smell of a sassafras tree. And it is one of two trees, mulberries, the other one, that have different shaped leaves on the same tree, which is tricky when you're young and you're trying to learn to identify the trees by their leaves because sassafras has three different shapes. But you never forget the fragrance of a crushed sassafras leaf or a broken stem. The rich can be used to make tea. It's the inner bark of the roots that's used, and root beer, and they used to use it all the time. But sassafras is not used that way anymore. You can drink a little bit of tea, but I wouldn't recommend drinking a lot because of a chemical called saffron. It's in the bark, has serious side effects if you drink a lot of it, and is carcinogenic. But sassafras? Sassafras is host to 38 species of butterflies and moths. Is that not amazing? So the big deal is that the best thing we can do to help the plight of birds, bees, and butterflies, and ultimately our own selves, is to plant native plants. There are so many more natives that we could talk about. This book, I don't know how many it has, but this for North American gardens. And I have to tell you, I was so excited to learn of a book this big, and actually it's available free on PDF for just Georgia natives. And it will be at the end, so don't worry, don't have to, we'll show it to you, not to worry. So I'm hoping that I showed you enough fantastic natives to inspire you to start using natives in your personal landscape and to encourage your neighbors to do the same thing. This is a typical subdivision. Imagine what it would look like if every backyard were a pollinator garden. Think about the impact that this many pollinator plants would have on our ecosystem. The birds would come back, the bees and the butterflies would abound, an entire neighborhood supporting nature. And you can either register just your backyard or the entire neighborhood as part of something called Homegrown National Park. We'll talk about that in a minute. So the big deal, our native wildlife is dying out. The way that we as individuals and together can make a difference is in our own yards, plant native. Take it a step further and participate in movements like Homegrown National Park and a program out of Connect to Protect, a program out of UGA that's called Connect to Protect. I particularly like this program. I think I already told you that it shows you how to have pollen and nectar all season long by planting different season bloomers, and also to plant host plants for the butterflies. The cool thing about this program is that it's working to make sure that nurseries, and they do it themselves to actually propagate their choices as, what do we call it? Native plant choice of the year. I lost the word, sorry, but you get what I'm talking about. So where do we find native plants? They're not in the big box stores. Well, at first I was going to say that and just leave it there, but there are some things you can find. Thrift, this time of year, when it's blooming, is in the big box nurseries. Muhly grass, because it's entering the trade, the landscape trade, can be found in big box plant nurseries. And they can generally find blueberries there too. Georgia State Botanical Garden and the Native Plant Society have lists that you can find online of places to buy plants. Several places in Metro Atlanta have seasonal sales. I love the one at Chattahoochee Nature Center, and Georgia Native Plant Society has them as well. GSU, that's such a long word. A long phrase. Perimeter College has become a GSU college, and they have had for a long time a native plant botanical garden. In at those gardens or at the school in Decatur, you can go to classes, and they have sales in the right time of year nearly every weekend. There are some commercial plant nurseries around too. The State Botanical Gardens and the Atlanta Botanical Garden have plant sales, and they generally have natives in their plants. So you can find native plants now, unlike a few years ago when they were just scarce. A lot of references. Could not have done this program without research sources. And I'm excited to learn about, I told you about this particular publication out of UGA. It's just as big as this one, is Armitage's native plants for the whole country. This one focuses on Georgia, and if you go to the website and look for these two publications, you can get a PDF. You don't have to pay $20 or $30 for a big fat book that won't fit on your shelf. All right, guys. I can't play the birds, can I? Mm-mm. All right. I don't like to read slides, but I'm going to read this because it's just so important. In the past, we have asked one thing of our gardens, that they be pretty. Now we need them to support life, sequester carbon, feed pollinators, and manage water. This is a statement by Doug Tallamy, a professor at the University of Delaware. He's written several books that can help you learn about natives if you're interested. And one of my classes showed us this statement by Margaret Mead, and it meant a lot to me because, I can do my own yard, but we all need to plant natives. But Margaret Mead said that, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has. So I challenge you this year, plant 3 natives in your yard or in a pot. Just plant 3 natives. I haven't figured out what I'm going to plant yet, but I have a few. I've sort of been starting on it, but maybe I'll let you know when I figure it out. Thank you for coming to our presentation. All of our classes are available on YouTube channels. And please remember to join us again for, forgot her name, Robin Pollock's plant demonstration. This is an actual demonstration using her amazing raised beds on April 18th at 2 p.m. So I'm looking forward to that. And you can always go back and visit any of these classes that we've already published on our YouTube, on our own North Fulton Master Gardener YouTube channel. Thank you again. Now, any questions?
Yes, ma'am. We've got a few.
Just a few?
Just a few, but they're good ones. So I'll start running through them.
All right.
First
Don't
one,
run too fast. Sorry.
Exactly. So the first one, the viewers, local Walmart stopped carrying mosquito dumps this year. Do you have any advice on how to lobby local retailers to carry more natural products like this?
That's a problem because they do what their home office says, and the home office does what they've been doing, unless they undertake additional surveys or studies or something. The thing I do when I go shopping for something is I ask about neonics. I ask about where the native plants are. Do you have any native plants? Why don't you have native plants? So I speak to the people there on the ground, and I haven't learned yet how to do anything else. I bet you we could write a letter campaign to the home offices. That might accomplish something.
Right.
Sorry, I don't have a cut and dried answer.
Speak to the managers. Yeah. How do you get rid of English ivy? Without a chainsaw, I guess.
All right. English ivy. And I will admit that I still have some in my house, at my yard, because I haven't been able to get it out yet. First, I want to tell you how to get it off the trees. Do not pull it down off the trees. At the base, near the ground, make a cut. Now, don't use a machete. Use something where you can just sever the limb and not interfere with the bark. Make another cut about 1 inch away. And if you cut all the stems that are running up the tree, in about a year, if you don't mind it being a little floppy looking for a while, in about a year, all of the English ivy will fall off of the tree. Now, the only way I get rid of English ivy is just to pull it up and put it in something where it's not going to go anywhere, like the actual landfill. I wish I had an incinerator for it. You can, and there are recommendations that you can. See, part of the problem with English ivy is that the leaf is slick, and herbicides just don't go through that. They fall off of it. But you can weed eat it, and then when new growth comes out, you can use herbicides on that. I don't guess I should make a plug for glyphosate, which I feel like is the safest one. But anyway, those are two things that I am going to, actually, I'm not going to use the weed eater. I'm just going to try to pull mine out. And it's a stinking thankless task, but think about it when you get done. It's gone, except that it's not. You have to check it next year. I pulled it all out from under my non-native Japanese maple, and then crawled in there 2 years later and found some more. So you have to keep after it.
All righty. So here's another, just a confirmation. To be clear, invasive plants aren't beneficial to the local wildlife, like heavenly bamboo that no birds seem to eat.
That's Nandina, kiddo. Heavenly bamboo doesn't do anything except occupy space that could be occupied by a native. We love our bamboo. It's our, and I'll wait, back up a minute. Nandina is not a true bamboo. We call it heavenly bamboo because we love it. It's heavenly, and it looks like a bamboo, but it's not. Yeah, it doesn't do anything for anybody except the people who look at it and like it.
Okay. What are your thoughts on Pachysandra as ground cover?
There's a native Pachysandra. There is. It's not native. And the more I research this, the more I'm convinced that native is the only way to go. Pachysandra worked, it's great ground cover, but I also think that we need to learn to like a little bit of bare dirt, because there's some bees that need bare dirt. Pick your place for it. And most places where Pachysandra grows, because it's in the shade, could be managed with just leaf litter, leaf mulch, to protect the ground and to protect keep moisture for the roots. And Pachysandra is going to be a competition for other things growing around it. So if it were mine, I'd take it out, but you have to do what you want to your yard.
Okay. There is a question on accessing this video afterwards. Yes, we posted a link in the chat box for where you can find this on our YouTube channel. More questions. Actually, they're coming in by the droves. What about turning lawn into meadow by planting things like clover?
Sorry, I interrupted your question, but I just learned and found today an amazing article about that, because the lawn is just, it's sterile. It uses up resources that need to be used elsewhere. And do you really want to pour those chemicals on your grass and let your kids play on it? Do you really want to pour those? Sorry, I'm ranting again. Do you really want to pour those chemicals on your grass and let it wash down into the river? There are ways to have alternative lawns. Now, they won't look like your beautiful, lush green velvet, but there are plants that are low-growing ground covers. Somebody asked me that it was in a neighborhood next door. And I made a list of stuff just off the top of my head that you could use. Anything that's low growing and native. Now, most of these things, or a lot of these things, will be considered weeds by people who keep their lawn. Violets are blooming right now, and they're so cool. But you spray your herbicide on your grass and the violets die because it's a broadleaf herbicide. Violets work. My brain just went blank. There are some natives that make basil rosettes and send up a single spike with a bloom on it. And if you want to mow it after those blooms, then you still got your flat ground again. The two ground covers I mentioned, green and gold and thrift. I think they would work for lawn substitutes because thrift doesn't get any bigger than 4 to 6 inches tall. And by the way, if you're gonna mow your substitute lawn, mow it at about 6 inches. But I would let my thrift grow and bloom and then mow it afterwards. And that actually might prompt it to bloom again. So yeah, there are things you can plant on the yard that are flat that you can mow occasionally. And actually you can play on them, you can run around and stomp and play football. Now, they might not stand up as well as you'd like, but the thing about the natives in that situation is they're going to come back. And unless you play hard on them every day. So yes, there are ways to replace your lawn with natives. I wouldn't let a baby crawl on it barehanded. My son got stung by a bumblebee in my mom's yard because she had white clover. White clover, I so much want it to be a native, but it's not. And I have not yet found a clover that's that short that is native. There are some that you could mow and keep short, but I'm still investigating that. So by all means, replace your lawn with low-growing native plants that support the ecology.
Great answer. Can you please recommend planting conditions for chokeberry?
Planting conditions for chokeberry. Chokeberry, I will look it up and I will tell you in the answers that we send out later.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I don't know it off the top of my head.
Okay. And just for everyone's knowledge, we will be posting all of these questions from all of the webinars on the website after their conclusion, which is next Sunday.
Wow.
Is lantana, I know it's been quick. Isn't lantana a non-native plant?
I think it is.
There was a picture of one.
Yeah, I should have found a picture with a native on it, but I don't think it's a native. In fact, when I was looking at that picture, I looked that up and then I did my famous forget to investigate further and decide what to do about it. But I don't think it's native at all. In fact, the Nature Center, Chattahoochee Nature Center recommends that when you're planting for pollinators, it's okay to use, they say, I'm not convinced yet, but they say that it's okay to use things like zinnias, which provide pollen and nectar. And the thing about annual things like zinnias is they bloom from last frost to first frost, so that the pollen and the nectar are there. So they recommend doing that. So if you want some lantana, it is a good source for pollen and nectar, just like white clover is. But I'm going to try to avoid anything that's not native, just because.
Okay. Can you mention the Native Plant Finder website that searches and ranks native plants by zip code and tells you how many caterpillar species each one supports?
Wow. Tell me again, and I'll look it up.
That's a mouthful.
A native plant website.
Finder website that searches and ranks native plants by zip code and tells you how many caterpillar species each one supports.
Wow. That would be outstanding information.
Yeah.
I'll see what I can do, and we'll publish it with the rest of the answers.
Okay. What was the name of the plant of the year that you mentioned? And I believe it was pollinator plant of the year.
Hang on 2 seconds. I've got it right here. There are 4 actually. You could look it up online. And I hate to tell you to do that. I want to be able to tell you off the top of my head, but my head's sort of flat. Hang on. I'm looking at my notes. Look here, alnifolia, which is sweet something. Do you remember what it is, Sandy?
Sweet spider?
No, it's not sweet spider. Hang on. Actually, Sandy, go to UGA and look up. Okay. Native Plant Society website has huge lists of natives. And if you want to know that particular one that I can't find and can't remember, go to the UGA website, if this is published in the resources, and look for Connect to Protect.
Okay.
I'm still looking. Sorry. Summer sweet.
Summer sweet.
Its scientific name is Clethra alnifolia, CLETHERA, ALNIFOLIA, and it is one of 4 plants, Georgian pollinator plants of the year. The Georgian pollinator plants of the year the team selects a summer bloomer, a spring bloomer, a fall bloomer, and a host plant. And they select them a year in advance of publishing the names of the plants. And this is just so cool because it gives them time and some nurseries time to propagate these plants so that they'll be available to the rest of us. I mean, you can look up plants and learn about plants and learn about what to plant, but you can't always find stuff that you know is going to work. And these plants have been selected by experts, not me, by experts. They know they work, and they are propagating them so that they'll be available. Did that help any?
Yeah, I think so. Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, so this is a good one. I have planted strawberry. I had planted a pot of.
Wait a minute.
Okay.
Let me listen to Cindy just a minute. Tell me.
Somebody just posted yes.
Yeah, that's Doug Tallamy's. Doug Tallamy has a blog, and the Homegrown National Park is also his brainchild. Yeah. Tell me again, Mary, please.
Okay, here we go. Yeah, this is a good one. I planted a pot of strawberries on my deck, and now they've taken over my yard via the birds. Should I try to get rid of them or just leave them alone and let them go?
I mean, it's your choice. Yeah. Was it garden strawberries or the wild strawberries. It doesn't matter.
It doesn't say, yeah.
You know what? I've got strawberries in my yard too. They do feed critters and they do have blossoms. And I would make them part of my alternative lawn program if I were doing it. So yeah, I mean, no, it's your yard. You make it like you want it, but and they're pretty. And when they bloom, they're pretty. And when they have fruit, they're nice and red. And the critters get to them before you do, and that's okay because that's what we want.
Yeah. I'm concerned about using a weed and feed on my lawn because I'm happy to have clover, but have some incredibly invasive weeds that have taken over. Any advice on not destroying, what to use to not destroy native plants, but also weed control?
Okay. First of all, I'm going to do another rant here. Weed and feed is what do you call a huge contradiction? Because the time of the season of the year for applying herbicide is different from the season of the year to apply fertilizer. You don't want to do them both at the same time. Now, it is true that most herbicides that are designed for lawns are going to get the broadleaf weeds, which are the things that I think are really good as lawn substitutes. Let's see what to do. Did they tell you what kind of weed it is that's in their lawn?
No.
Okay. It's taking over the grass, and they want the grass. Okay.
Yeah. There's lawns that has clover, but it's also getting other kind of weeds. Like they're okay with the clover, but the other weeds.
Yeah, and there are some nasty weeds that can invade. Okay, this nobody's going to like this answer, but what I would do is you use a little glyphosate, kill the whole thing. Glyphosate, by the way, is one of the few. Well, you have to use it appropriately because you don't want to breathe it or drink it or get it on your skin. But when it's on the ground, within 3 days, it has decomposed. And then this is what they tell me at UGA, at a class I took. I was amazed when they said this. But within 3 days, it has decomposed to amino acids that are already in the soil. So glyphosate, especially if the sun shines on it. Now, you don't want to use some of the others because some of the others can stay around a while. And when they touch something other than leaves, they can do damage to the plant. So if it were me, and I will tell you frankly, this is basically what I've done. I would kill everything. I would pile mulch on as high and deep as I could and let it sit there for a year and then start over. The problem with that, though, is that a lot of the pesky weeds have seed banks in the soil. Well, one example is I lost it again. Switchgrass, Japanese stiltgrass. It took me 2 weeks, but I did learn the scientific name, Microstigium veminum. Pulls out so easily, but the seed bank lasts 5 years. So there's no guarantee that method would do what you want to accomplish. And you don't want to lose all your lawn, your grass meanwhile, especially if you've installed something that's expensive like what's the expensive one, Sandy? Zoysia. So I'm sorry I'm not much help with that. There is one way to do it, though. And you're not going to like this either. Get yourself a sit-upon and a bucket and a digger and go sit on the lawn for a couple hours every day and pull it out. Yeah, nobody's going to do that. You don't have time.
Have fun with that, yeah. All right, so I'm going to ask one more question for everyone who has put in your questions. Thanks a lot. If we didn't get them answered, look on our website after the end of the series and we will have them all posted with answers. I'll work with Paula to get them all answered. Would love your thoughts on Mahonia. You showed it as invasive, but mine are tame and awesome.
Well, Mahonia. There's probably a species because there's about 9 different varieties of Mahonia, and there probably is one that is tame. And you use what you love. I mean, I have some daylilies that have a lot of sentimental value to me. And well, they will provide pollen when they bloom. But I have some daylilies that I'm not going to pull out of my yard because they have a lot of sentimental value to me. So you do what you want to do with it. Just make sure you have something in your yard that supports wildlife. Plant 3 native plants this year.
Okay, that's all of the questions. Thanks for everyone for attending tonight. We hope this was very helpful for you, and thanks, Paula.
Oh, you're welcome. Mary, can I say one more thing about Mahonia? I'm not sure I made it clear that there are different species of Mahonia. Leatherleaf is the one that's vastly invasive, and some of the others are, but I think there are about 7 or 8 different species, and there may be one that's tame and nice and behaves properly. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.